All right, welcome back to the Nothing Notable podcast. Jack Hubert and Daniel Elmore here, talking about the end of the NFL season. And boy, oh boy, what a crazy season we had. Ended with a game in which a lot of people were rooting for a tie.
Yeah.
For the pure chaos. I've never seen that happen before. Dan, give me just your, opening thoughts on this last NFL season that we watched.
This year, more than any other year, was so clearly segmented for every single team. Look at teams like the Bengals, the Titans, the Niners, the Ravens. You look at them for a 3-game stretch. It's like, oh, this team is the best team in the NFL. And then the next 3 weeks, they're the worst team in the NFL. Then they're a totally different type of team. They're kind of a frisky team, as Papa Bill Simmons likes to say. And then for another stretch of games, they're a completely different team. And so at the end of the season, we're left with this, I don't know, energy. Because these teams are not as clearly definable because of that. So now as we go into the playoffs, we don't know really what we have. We worked really hard all season to get to a point where probably the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl again. But still, there's a bunch of strange, undefinable teams, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
I 100% agree. I was thinking about it, and to me, this is the season of parity. In a way, we have so much parity going on in the NFL right now. The gap between, the top teams and then those bottom tier playoff teams, I don't think is that large. It's the thinnest it's ever been. Mm-hmm. I think every team this year has its issues, and that was highlighted through the, segmentality of the season. If that's a word, I'm going to go with it. Yeah. So, that kind of brings us to what we wanted to do with this episode here was go over what we got right and what we got wrong through the season. Going back to our opening episode this year and our takes that we had, which of them stood up over the course of the year, which of them failed, and talking about how segmented this season was. If you look at an individual, 3-4 week stretch, some of these takes would have looked really good and some of them would have looked really bad. Let's start off right off the bat with a take that we got wrong. Which was that the Panthers were going to be a good team this year. Yeah. We spent, when I was listening back to our season preview podcast, we spent our first segment talking about the Nfc South. And, I went on a little diatribe there about how I was really high on the Panthers and I liked the talent on the team. And I thought, Sam Darnold was going to have a career redeeming year. And for the first 3 games of the year, that looked pretty good. They started off 3-0 and then from there, it was all downhill. They finished the year 5-12. They were a bad team. I personally think Matt Rule should have been fired. He has not been fired as of the time of recording this. Panthers really let me down this year. I was high on them. Didn't work out. I
said that the Panthers had a shot at skipping the rebuild, basically, because I thought that they were in a pretty good position. They had some talent on their team. They just needed a decent quarterback. And I thought Sam Darnold could be that. I never thought Sam Darnold was going to take the leap and go into the top 10. But I thought if he was the 16th to 20th best quarterback in the NFL, the Panthers could be a good team. And he wasn't.
Yeah, right there with you. I think if he could have given them Jimmy G level type of production, they would have been looking at a playoff spot. But they just couldn't figure out that quarterback position all year long, which, little side thing we got wrong is that I made a quick note during the podcast, the opening one, that I thought Cam Newton could still play. Not the case.
He was pretty terrible. And that kind of speaks to the dire circumstances at quarterback for the Panthers, that they had to resort to signing a fan favorite, Cam Newton, in order to try and just add any sort of booster of energy into this offense. It didn't work. They're not in a great position, because I don't think that they're a team that can land one of these guys that's going to be out there like a Russell Wilson or an Aaron Rodgers.
And now, too, not to, delve into offseason stuff, but it sounds like Russ isn't going to be going anywhere. Aaron Rodgers in recent weeks has kind of hinted at that maybe he doesn't want to go anywhere either. So now you're looking at it and, once again, just want to talk about this super quick 30 seconds, but the best quarterback who might be available for trade this offseason is, Deshaun Watson, if his legal troubles shape up so he can play, and then Jimmy G. Yeah. There's not, we thought, there's going to be a lot of great guys available. Not the case. And, for teams like the Panthers and Broncos and Washington, we were kind of right again. I didn't have this written down, but we were right that like maybe that opportunity to get a star quarterback wasn't going to come, and they should have drafted some of these young guys.
This was the same thing last offseason, because once Deshaun Watson went off the table, it was like, wait, who do we have left? Like Matt Stafford's the best guy right now. It's like, shoot, we were planning for a little bit more than this.
We were like Dak, Matt Stafford, and Deshaun, but then it ends up just being Matt Stafford.
Yeah, and that kind of happens every year. We get our hopes up. That's just not the way that you should approach the quarterback position, probably. You shouldn't be, closing your eyes and hoping and praying that someone's going to become available. You got to go try and find your guy. You got to go do something. I don't know. But the Panthers, I feel like if they had a good, they're still just a quarterback away from being a good team. They're many players away from being a great team, though.
Right. To pivot to a happier note for some, what we got right, the Jags suck.
Yeah.
The Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence experiment did not work at all. Urban might go down as one of the biggest busts of a quarterback ever. I have said to you off the podcast multiple times that I think he has surpassed Jim Tom Sula as the most over his head coach. In my recent memory. Did not work out. We didn't love the pairing coming into the year, and guess what? We were right.
It went so downhill so fast with the video that got released of him in that club, and like that's whatever. The thing about that though is like he's flying home in a separate plane. Like that's the bigger thing. Like
it was more like a sign of bad leadership than anything else.
Yeah, what you do in your personal life, you go deal with that yourself. But yeah, not being on the same plane as your team, that's insane. And it just snowballed from there. And in many ways, Trevor Lawrence is lucky to have had Urban Meyer this year, because maybe Urban Meyer was the reason for all of his troubles this year, or maybe it completely disguised the fact that he has a lot of trouble. He had a really bad year for a rookie quarterback.
It was not good.
It wasn't good. I'm not going to quit on him yet, but it wasn't what you wanted out of the number 1 overall pick. He showed signs of immense talent throughout the year, but also just never put it together. Never, ever put it together. And so because Urban Meyer was like this clown show, we're just like, oh, well, that's the reason why Trevor's having a bad season. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to find out next year and the year after. But it was just a bad year all around for everybody involved in that organization. I feel bad for a lot of the players on that team, because I do think that they're a fairly talented team, a growing team of young talent, I should say.
Right. And I think, the Trevor Lawrence aspect of it all is the more interesting thing to talk about, because Urban Meyer's not coming back to the NFL. But Trevor Lawrence is going to be their quarterback next year. And, hopefully for them for the next 10 plus years. I think with him and this whole rookie quarterback class in general, like we saw the flashes, but like if you look at the whole season, it was kind of disappointing. The production didn't match what the talent level was. But what I will say about all the other quarterbacks, Zach Wilson and Justin Fields and Mac Jones and Trey Lance, although I think Mac Jones is kind of in a different category just of who he was as a prospect. But I don't think Trevor Lawrence necessarily got better between the first game and the last game of the year, and I feel like all those other guys did.
I think that's a really good point. The first week of the season, I was like, oh yeah, this is the first overall pick. Like he had some sloppy throws, but like, it was a pretty good game overall. And then the mid stretch of the season, and by mid stretch, I mean week 2 to week 17. It was just like 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 180 yards. It's like, what?
Yeah.
We could get that from a backup QB. We could get that from Case Keenum if we want. We could have gotten that from Gardner Minshew and then some, because Gardner Minshew is a great quarterback. Don't at me. Think I'm with you. I think it didn't quite look to me when I would watch Jags games that he was a different player over the course of the season.
Just to, quickly piggyback off that, another thing that I think we were right about is that the AFC South just sucked. We talked about the Jags, the Texans, we all knew were going to be bad. The Titans, they have the 1 seed somehow, but I'm just like, I have questions about them as a team still. All the questions I had still remain. I think the interesting team for me to talk about here is the Colts.
Yeah.
Because, we went through a stretch of this year where the people were like, oh, are the Colts a Super Bowl contender? Which was just preposterous to me, because Carson Wentz was still their quarterback, and I don't think Carson Wentz is very good. And, you know, in that last game against the Jags, a team that gave up 50 points the week before, a win and you're in type of game with thousands of people dressed as clowns in the stands, Carson Wentz showed us his ass yet again.
It's a shame. It's a shame because they're a good team that's a quarterback away. This is kind of the story of the NFL, though. Every single year, this is more than half of the teams, and they did this to themselves.
Right.
It's not like they drafted Carson Wentz and he didn't perform well. They traded for him.
They traded their first round pick for him.
They made a trade for him, and now Philadelphia gets to take that pick, which is what happened with Philadelphia, man. They were like the laughingstock of the NFL, and now they're in a pretty good position where like they have multiple first round picks. The cap situation is going to clear up. Everything just changes so quickly.
Right. Moving over to that division, the NFC East. One thing we were wrong about, and I don't have a whole lot to say about this, but we were, coming into the year, us and many other people thought that the Washington football team defense was going to be like the elite defense that they were last year, and they just simply were not. Washington, another team that finds himself in this like QB purgatory hell sort of situation here. But more so than their offense being bad this year, I was disappointed with the quality of their defense.
Especially because you go out and get a guy like Ron Rivera, who's well-renowned as a defensive specialist, and the team just doesn't perform the way that they're supposed to. I'm not sure if this was the anomaly or if last year was the anomaly. So we're going to have to wait until next year and find out. I thought that they would at least be a team in the hunt because of their defense, regardless of who they have at quarterback. But of course, that's not the case. So yeah, I have nothing else to say other than it's an incredibly disappointing thing. I look forward to seeing what moves they make in the offseason, where they think they need to fix, like what holes they think they need to patch. Because often that's where teams go wrong in the offseason. They patch the wrong holes. They go out and get the wrong guys. They pay a receiver $80 million when they should have put that money to like two other positions.
The New York Giants essentially did that this year, where they went out and paid, I think, $75 million for Kenny Golladay.
Yeah.
Moving on to this is a weird one here because I feel like we were kind of right, but also kind of wrong on this team. And it was the Raiders.
Yeah.
We said that they would probably finish with 8 wins or so and be a mediocre team. And, they started the year off hot. They were looking really good. And then they looked horrible. And then they ended the year looking good. So, they're in the playoffs. Props to their interim head coach. They props to him, Derek Carr. They have had just about as much adversity as any team in the league this year. Yeah. With their coach, John Gruden, getting outed as a bigot. Henry Ruggs situation. So the fact that they were able to muster their way into the playoffs is impressive, but just as a team, I'm not sold on them.
Right. You lose your leader, so to speak, your head coach. And then you realize that Derek Carr has been the leader all along. And it obviously matters who your head coach is, but in this case, what mattered more was who is the head of your franchise, and that's Derek Carr. And I think that this was really big for him and his career because his head's been on a platter for, as long as Gruden's been there. And it's always been is Gruden going to get rid of Derek Carr? Is he going to go try and flip him for someone else? Is Marcus Mariota going to take over?
And it hasn't been deserved. Derek Carr has done nothing to deserve, the hate is a strong word, but the hate that he's gotten over the years.
Right. And the fact that he basically saved this franchise from falling apart this season is incredibly impressive. It's a heroic gesture. It really is heroic. His back must be so sore,
right?
So a shout out more than anything, just shout out to Derek Carr, because I think that he really just buoyed this team, kept them afloat, completely drowning at sea. And so, good for them. Good for them getting into the playoffs. Who are they playing? They play the
Bengals, I think.
That's right. So I don't have high hopes for that. But also, I'm not going to say that they can't win that game. I think the Bengals are an amazing team. I love them. Joe Burrow is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the NFL.
Another team we got right is we were high on the Bengals.
That's right.
Look at us.
But there's something super weird about this Raiders team. They've won a lot of super odd games. Their kicker's playing great. Their quarterback is playing great. Their running back is great. I love Darren Waller. They have a bunch of like really good players on this team. I think that the way that they've been constructing this team is actually better than I wanted to give them credit for at first. I think that's because of Mayock. A lot of people wanted to clown on him.
And it's weird because the guys that they should have hit on, like they've done poorly with their first round draft picks.
Yeah.
Like very poorly, but then they're able to find other guys who contribute throughout the rest of the draft.
Right.
So it's not like Mayock is like stupid. Like it's not like he's just up and down the draft picking bad players. I think maybe he's just, I think some GMs get into this mode sometimes where they're going to pick their guy no matter what. And I think Mayock's maybe one of those guys where he picks someone like way above where he should.
Kind of right, kind of wrong. Happy to be kind of wrong about them, though.
Here's another team that I'm throwing into the kind of right, kind of wrong category is we were, I think, substantially lower than the Cardinals than the rest of the field coming into this year. We just weren't sold on Cliff Kingsbury. And, for the first half of the season, the Cardinals were making us, eat some crow. They were 8-1. They were, going out there and competing every single game. And then they finished the year, I think it was 12-5 or 11-6. 11-6 because the Rams finished 12-5 and won the division.
That's right.
So down the stretch, they finished 3-5 the last 8 games and just didn't look very good. They lost to the Lions, which is never good. Don't do that. So yeah, I don't know what to make of this Cardinals team because they showed us their ass the last half of the year. They just weren't very good down the stretch.
With the Cardinals, when they were 8-1, I was sitting back like, yeah, I know what's about to happen. I've never been more confident in my life about something. It didn't help that Kyler Murray got injured and was out. Colt McCoy played pretty well while he was gone.
They were able to. They won games. 2-1 with Colt McCoy. That's not why they fucked up.
No, they won games. But still, that momentum is sort of killed because Kyler goes out and then he comes back and it's like he's not playing 100%. Like he's not. I do not believe in this Cardinals team. I want to broaden this though because this happens so often. The Rams are sort of like this too. The Cardinals are like this. There's a lot of teams with like young hotshot coordinator type head coaches, and they're very good for a large portion of the season. And then the second half of the season, things kind of start to crumble, and then they get to the playoffs and they just can't get over the hump. And I don't know what this is, but it seems like it's an epidemic in the NFL.
I have some words to say about Sean McVay. I'm going to save it though for when we get to the 49ers and, we'll talk about that Rams game. I will say to your point, though, I think I agree with you. I think there needs to be adults in the room sometime, and I think a lot of these, young hotshot coordinators don't necessarily have that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Sean McVay's best year, the year they went to the Super Bowl and only scored 3 points, happened when Wade Phillips was the defensive coordinator, one of the greatest defensive minds of the last 25 years. And we can broaden this out, I think, still, too, to, these young guys, is they don't have the experience necessary to be able to adapt to different types of things that are thrown at them. McVay has been beaten by the same style of defense for the last few years, ever since Belichick held him to 3 points in the Super Bowl. Rams fans were awfully wanted to talk shit about the 49ers in the Super Bowl when they only scored 3 fucking points. But I think, there over time you learn how to adapt. And I don't know if some of these young guys have learned how to do that yet.
And that's the same thing with Shanahan too. The adaptability is not something that I would say Shanahan excels at. I think he's getting better at it, but this was the case with, losing the lead in the Super Bowl, and then we lose the lead in the Super Bowl again. And then it kind of happens time and time again where it's like, I don't know if Shanahan really I don't know if he knows improv,
Right.
I don't know if he can totally coach on the fly like that. And I feel like that's the same thing for McVay. And I feel like that's definitely the same thing for Kingsbury and for this Cardinals team. And Kyler Murray is so exceptional, and DeAndre Hopkins and Watt, and just they have a slew of really talented players on this team, and they are a good team. I don't see a scenario where they win a Super Bowl this year, though.
Just based off vibes, which is a very poor analysis way to go about it, but numbers aren't even real. So like,
we'll talk about that at some point. Maybe right now, just
you
real
know
quick.
what? It does kind of transition to what I want to talk about next. Another team we were wrong about. Another very talented team, I think, with another one of these young hotshot head coaches, the Chargers.
Yeah.
Sad. You know, I thought the Chargers had a chance to win the whole AFC this year. They're not even in the playoffs now. And there are several games this year where you look at it. Number one, their defense just wasn't any good. But there were several games this year where their head coach, Brandon Staley, who, you know, supposedly is a great defensive mind with a defense that wasn't any good this year. And I think everyone kind of loves him because he's like, says all the right things at the podium. And, you know, he loves analytics and numbers. And, you know, Twitter gets hard as hell off that shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a good coach or not. There were several games this year, to finally get to the point, where I think he cost them by trying to go for it in situations where he shouldn't have, where just like kind of basic football, you know, knowledge and feel will tell you like, okay, when you are on your own 25-yard line, don't go for it on 4th and 2 because you're going to give the other team only 25 yards and basically an automatic field goal if you don't get it. Other times where it's like, why are you going for it before half here when you're on, you know, the 2-yard line when you could just kick the field goal and get points and you're getting the ball back after half? I was disappointed by them, and he's a big reason why, I think.
Yeah, the jury's still out for me on Staley. I don't know. He seems like a nice guy. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe he's in this McVay Kingsbury camp where like superstar personality completely wins over the room and like knows football, obviously knows football, but there's more to being an NFL coach, as you know, obviously we're armchair quarterbacking this or armchair coaching this, but like, yeah, there's just more to it than that. And there's some of these guys, they just never get that, whatever that is. So we'll have to see with Staley. Herbert is so goddamn good,
right?
This was the weirdest game statistically against the Raiders in this week 18 game, where he throws, I think it was 113 passes and completed like 7% of them. But when he completed them, they were just like the sickest throws you've ever seen, all on 4th down in the fourth quarter and overtime, just darts, absolute arm cannon. And this guy is like one of the most elite arm talent quarterbacks in the NFL. And he's so fun to watch. And it's so disappointing that they are not in the playoffs, because just in terms of like, what do you want to see as a product in the playoffs? I want to see Justin Herbert.
I would rather see Justin Herbert over old ass Ben Roethlisberger, who can't throw the ball anymore.
And that's going to be miserable for the NFL. The NFL was hoping that Carlson was going to miss that kick. The NFL was like, they had their snipers ready. Coming into this next season, I think the Chargers are going to be better next year than they were this year. More time in the system. Everyone gets a little bit more comfortable. Herbert matures a little bit. All of these pieces mature a bit. I have high hopes for them going forward, but we said the same thing last year. They disappointed us this year. So ultimately really disappointing. On analytics, I was super pro analytics when it was like Moneyball, you know, in baseball. You know, okay, let's get on base. You know, it's not all about this stat. It's not all about that stat. It's like, okay, get on base, do a couple of these other things. Walks are valuable, you know, stuff like that. And then I was in on it with the Warriors because like, Steph, you're an incredible 3-point shooter. You should shoot 15 times a game. Now you should shoot 18 times a game. They're going to tell Steph by his final season that he should shoot from 30 times a game.
Right.
Because yeah, that makes sense, because 3 points are more than 2. And like, if you're that good at it, do it. But in all of these cases, it sort of works to the advantage of the players that they have. Like in the case of Steph Curry, he shoots 50% basically from anywhere on the court. If you're basically hitting half of the time, take more 3-pointers, because then you will add more points to the total score of your team. So that just makes sense because it's Steph Curry. When you look at these like 4th down numbers, it's like, yeah, the Chiefs go for it on 4th down all the time because they have Tyreek Hill, who could just run faster 2 yards than anyone in the NFL.
Or Travis Kelce, who can just get open against
and just body a dude.
Right.
Yeah. So, of course, when they go for it, they're executing it at like a super high level. So then you look at those numbers and you look at a couple other teams' numbers, and it's like, oh yeah, this is actually
49ers are very good on, third and short, fourth and short situation because Jimmy G is very good at the QB sneak.
Yeah, these numbers are accumulated because of very specific players on specific teams and some specific circumstances. You cannot really extrapolate that and put that into the hands of every single player in the NFL. Like if you're running out there with no disrespect, but Nate Sudfeld, the 49ers third string quarterback, I throw almost all of those stats out the window because you cannot execute at the same level. These statistics don't make sense if your players aren't playing at the same level as the players that were creating those stats to begin with, because like Sudfeld is not going to be as effective on 4th and 2 as Mahomes with Hill and Kelsey. So these numbers don't really make sense if you're not using them to help the players that you actually have on your field.
I appreciate teams going for it on 4th down, and I think there's a time and a place for that. But I also think you need to weigh, the opportunity cost of what happens if it doesn't work out. And like the case of the example we gave earlier with the Chargers last night, not getting the first down there and giving the Raiders the ball with an automatic field goal basically is a worse outcome than the positive of them getting the first down there and still having to go another 73 yards to get a touchdown. So I think for me is that, analytics and, statistics when evaluating players and people's performances, they have use. They are useful, but they're a piece of the mosaic. They're a tile in the mosaic that helps create the bigger picture. They should not be used as the end all be all of your decision making. Speaking of a team that we were not out on heading into the year, our final thing we got wrong, and maybe one of the biggest things, we thought the Browns had a chance to win the Super Bowl. We had a change of heart, and we decided that, maybe Baker Mayfield can get the job done. And that was maybe the worst decision we made all season because Baker Mayfield is a bad quarterback. I have no issue saying that at this point. I understand that he was, quote unquote, playing hurt the whole year. But, first of all, I do not have any respect for players who go out there and play hurt to the point where they're putting their team at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Because you can't tell me that hurt Baker Mayfield was a better option than Case Keenum. So that was, number one. If he was so hurt that that's the reason why his performance was so bad, that's very selfish of him. The Browns let me down. I liked everything about this team. I liked the running backs. I liked what they had with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Some people look like dumbasses now for saying that Odell was the reason Baker was bad, which makes no goddamn sense.
Right. Having
a more talented receiver on your team is going to make your quarterback worse. It's well documented, obviously.
Obviously.
I like their defense a lot, and their defense came to play throughout portions of the year. But, what it really all boils down to is Baker's not very good. And looks like, reading the reports, they're bringing him back next year. So have fun, Browns fans.
It's so tough because, if I was the GM in Cleveland, I also would bring Baker Mayfield back. Like we said earlier, who else are you going to go get? Unless something becomes available, and that something could come available at some point in the offseason. But if nothing does materialize, then roll out with Baker Mayfield. Let's see what happens. 2, he was very good in that system for a period of time in the second half of last season. And then this season, it just didn't work. There was a couple of games early in this season where I was like, Baker's still good. He's playing a little sloppy, but he's still pretty good. And then it all just went downhill. We need to do something as a culture, and us specifically on this podcast. I think this is what we'll be known for. Is
our New Year's resolution?
This is our New Year's resolution. We have to do something about people thinking that they have to play injured. Like you were just saying, it's stupid because it's like, be a man. So taps into like the worst parts of football culture. Like, be a man up, nut up, sack up, like just be
testicle up.
Yeah, testicle up.
Just keep it going. Scrotum up.
Yeah. Because it's like if you're hurt, it's seen as this is so stupid. This is why football is the dumbest sport. But like, if you're hurt, it's like you're a wuss. You're a baby. Like, just put some tape on it and go. It's football. And that is so stupid. One, that kind of thinking has led to literal deaths of human beings that played the football position, people that suffered incredible head trauma that ended up committing suicide or dying at an early age because of these brain issues. So no, don't just put tape on something. If you're hurt, you got to go down. And that's okay. And that's not being selfish. Like you said, the opposite is being selfish. If you go onto the field playing hurt, because now you're putting your team in a bad position. Jimmy ended up winning this Week 18 game for the Niners against the Rams. I thought it was a bad idea for him to even try to give it a go. If you have an injury that so dramatically affects the way that you're going to play, especially when you're a quarterback, don't do it. But yeah, Baker should not have been playing. You know, I think that this
if he was as hurt as we're being led to believe.
Right. If he was as hurt as yes. If he was actually hurt like that, then he should not have been on the field. And that's on Baker. But because it's so ingrained in these players that you're supposed to play hurt, it's more on Stefanski. It's more on the medical staff. It's more on this entire organization for allowing him to go out there and play hurt. Of course, if he wasn't as hurt as we think, then he's just bad. Right. Because he played bad. And you could say one of two things when a quarterback is playing bad. They're playing bad or they're playing bad because. And so all season we were saying he was playing bad because of an injury. I'm willing to accept that. Let's go another year. I'm fine with it. Let's see what happens. Next year is 100% do or die for Baker Mayfield. If he performs poorly again, he's going to be a backup quarterback in the NFL.
Well, because they have to give him his contract's up after next year too. So they're going to have to pay him, if they want to keep him around to being a starting quarterback money, and that's a lot of money. That's going to hurt what you can do with the rest of your team. So,
and just one more thing that I just thought about with the injury thing. A lot of these contracts have incentives where, like, if you miss a certain amount of games, you don't get a certain amount of pay. So obviously I understand why these players want to do that also. Cause if you miss 4 games, then you're not getting $1 million.
$500,000.
Yeah. Then you're not getting $500K, and that's real money. That's especially when you're playing a sport where you're probably going to be done by the time you're 30. Even if you're a great player, by the time you're 35, so this is not going to last forever. So you're trying to make every dollar you can. So I get that. I understand that, but we've just got to do something. I think, we just got to talk about the fact that, like, playing injured is not cool. It's not being a man, whatever that means. So yeah, Baker should not have been playing. The Browns were so disappointing all year. They kept staying afloat. They were just on the edge, and part of that's because of how weird and bad this division was. A very disappointing division. The Ravens had their whole slew of COVID troubles.
Talk about injuries.
Oh my God.
When they had a corner get hurt in that last game we were watching, I said to you, I'm like, I don't know how they have anyone else to run out there.
Yeah.
Like, they were just decimated from training camp. They lost like 4 running backs to torn ACLs, like, before the season even started.
Really tough year for them. Again, quoting Papa Bill Simmons, they had the year from hell. And so this division was so strange and so weak that they kept staying afloat. The Browns did. And because of that, it made the team even more disappointing, because I was constantly disappointed. It's not like they came out and they went 0-6 and we knew that they weren't going to make the playoffs the whole season. They were just teetering on the edge. Like, they could turn it around at any point, and then they just never did. And I look forward to seeing them next year. I hope we get the second half of the 2020 season from Baker next year, as opposed to the first half of that season or this entire season. Because good golly, Miss Molly, was it rough to watch.
Second to last thing we got right here. The rookie class in general was really good. Lots of talented, high quality rookies who produced this year. Even if the quarterbacks kind of like left something to be desired with their production, the top 3 wide receivers in the draft, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith, all performed. Kyle Pitts was very talented and good. Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle for the Chargers, might make all-pro team. Same with Creed Humphrey, the center for the Chiefs. Running backs were good this year with Najee and Javonte and Elijah Mitchell. Really fun rookie class. I just wanted to get that in there before we, move on to our final topic.
Yeah, the receivers are the ones that really just like shine every year now. You always say like there will never be another bad wide receiver class. We have so many drills and like so many camps, and there's just so much more that we know about how to play that position that it's just like shooting in the NBA. Like people are just going to be good shooters from now on. So the receivers, they're like the shining star of the class. The quarterbacks, they did leave a lot to be desired, but it was so weird watching these quarterbacks for me this year because they're playing poorly. And I'm so proud of them.
Right.
Which I cannot explain because I normally, if like any other year, like if the quarterbacks put up these sort of numbers, I would be like, nope, not going to happen. I'm out on this guy in this team. But this year, Justin Fields didn't get a lot of playing time. When he did, mixed results. I thought he was excellent. Which like
I saw a lot of things I really enjoyed.
Yeah. We'll talk about Trey Lance a little bit more in a moment, but like I'm willing to argue that he was one of the better rookie quarterbacks this year in his absolutely limited playing time. Because again, you could see him learning super quickly, and it's the quickness with which he's learning that made me so excited because like it would ordinarily take, I mean, Daniel Jones still hasn't learned some of the stuff that Trey Lance has figured out, So, and then of course, Trevor Lawrence was bad, but there were moments where he actually turned me because I came into the season being like, I don't understand the Trevor Lawrence piece of this. And Zach Wilson, I have nothing to say because I didn't watch like any Jets games. Mac Jones was good. All these quarterbacks, like I leave the season being like, yeah, they weren't, I can see why ordinary fans are like,
you forgot the best one, Davis Mills.
Well, of course, Davis Mills. He really surprised me. He showed something. He got himself a career in the NFL. So good for him. All these quarterbacks, if you just look at the numbers, again, because analytics and numbers are stupid. If you just look at the numbers, you'll be sorely disappointed. But if you watch the games and you really focus, you will see so much to love about these quarterbacks. That doesn't mean that they're going to pan out and they're all going to turn into, all pro type players, but the potential is still there. And I'm really excited about that.
On the last point you said, the big thing that I would like to, kind of get through to audiences, whoever's listening out there. If you really care about football and want to know more, watch the games, go on YouTube and try to find some people who break down the games in a good way. For quarterback, JT O'Sullivan's QB School is an excellent place to just kind of like get a real nice breakdown of like what you're seeing on Sunday. Go, talk to people on Twitter who know more than you do because there's a lot of them out there.
There's also a lot of dumb people on Twitter.
There's a lot of dumb people on there too, especially Rams fans. But yeah, there's a lot of information out there and a lot of people who have knowledge about the game, and go seek them out.
It's just amazing that if you're going to be watching this, like learn a little bit, like try to figure it out. It's more fun that way.
Right.
So yeah, do dig, do investigate, do try to learn some stuff because it makes the game more fun, and it also makes it less heartbreaking in a way, because when I knew less about football, I was so much more emotional watching the games. If the Niners lost a meaningless week 7 game against the Seahawks, I was destroyed for the day because I didn't know why Alex Smith would throw that ball. I didn't know why Frank Gore went out of bounds on this play. I don't know why they missed that tackle. Now you watch it and you're like, okay, he was out of position on that tackle. Frank Gore didn't have any room this way. He was going to get crushed if he went that way. And then Alex Smith threw this ball because there were 2 defenders coming down this way, receiver and he were not on the same page because the play broke down. You just you figure out why something goes wrong. You're less emotional about it. And in many ways, that I think that that's a better way to watch football.
Man, Jack from 4 years ago would have been screaming at the top of his lungs watching the 49ers game yesterday in the first half.
Oh, yeah.
And, cussing and stomping around, and, was not the case, which brings us to the last thing we were right about. The 49ers were the best team in the NFC West.
Let's go.
I know the records don't indicate that, but if you look at where the teams stand today, the 49ers are better than the Rams, clearly. I think they're better than the Cardinals still, with how the Cardinals finished the year. Obviously better than the Seahawks who missed the playoffs. Best team in the NFC West. Let's talk about it.
I think that this is great framing. You cannot tell me that the Rams are better than the 49ers if the 49ers beat them twice in the season, 6 times over multiple seasons. Shanahan is 6-0 against Sean McVay. Sean McVay had never lost a game when leading at halftime until this game. This team should have a better record than they do. And if they just executed a little bit better in a couple of games, then they would probably be the division winners. And then we wouldn't have to argue about like they are the best team in the division, because it would be so clear, because they would have won the division. Just look at this game. I mean, they're down 17-0. Jimmy is playing like hot garbage.
Oh, wait, you forgot the most important detail about them being down 17-0.
Oh, please.
The bitch-ass coach of the Rams runs out into the end zone to celebrate like he's a goddamn wide receiver, fucking living out his high school dreams of being an NFL star, out there trying to get on TV, show up the other team.
And you know what's so funny about that, too? Because we were watching the game, and like before that happened, I was like, no coach in the NFL likes to be on the field more than Sean McVay. He's on the physical field constantly, which should be a penalty. I'm fine with them not calling it a penalty, because like everybody does it, but you're not supposed to be on the actual field. And like after every play, he's just running up on the green grass, and he's just like slapping dudes and giving high fives and stuff. And then, he runs into the end zone. The referee is like, hey, you got to stand back. And he's just like, sorry, my guy, I'm so excited. And you do that, you set yourself up so hard. It's just like when Aaron Donald said, like, Debo who? You're just don't do things like that, because you're setting yourself up to get completely punked in the future.
You're gonna get clowned on.
Aaron Donald's one of the greatest players that's ever played the game of football. So he has nothing to,
unless he's playing against Dan Brunskill.
We really do own Aaron Donald.
We really do.
But he's one of the greatest players of all time. So he could say whatever he wants, because maybe Debo becomes one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. Maybe he's just like a really
Debo's
good...
a one-on-one.
He is. Maybe he's just a really good guy for several years and then flames out. Only time will tell. But point being, even if you're Aaron Donald, don't do that. Don't play those games, because at some point, that player that you're trying to punk on is going to punk your ass. And that's happened every single time since Aaron Donald said that thing in that press conference. Deebo Samuel, 1 of 1. Goated. George Kittle, best tight end in football. Trent Williams, best left tackle in football. Jimmy Garoppolo
wasn't even on the field yesterday.
Wasn't even on the field. Laken Tomlinson, one of the best guards in the NFL. Jimmy Garoppolo, when he's playing right, really, really good quarterback.
Best quarterback at leading, 90 plus yard drives once he's put the team in that position already.
That's how he likes to play football, I guess. He's got that like Madden logic where like the game is too easy, so you let the other team get back into it, and then you can lead the game winning drive.
Sometimes it doesn't work out.
And sometimes it
doesn't. But yesterday.
Yeah. And then on defense, Nick Bosa, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Eric Armstead. We've got Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Emmanuel Mosley, very strong cornerback.
You know what? Emmanuel Mosley is a top 10 cornerback in the NFL.
I'm happy. I'm here for it.
Numbers aren't real, but I did look through the numbers. First of all, he only gave up 27 yards per game this year when he was in coverage. I'd say that's pretty darn good.
I'd say that'll do it.
His passer rating allowed when he was targeted was, I believe it was 64.5 amongst corners with who had been targeted 50 or more times. That was, I believe, 8th in the NFL this year. Top 10 corner, Emmanuel Mosley.
And we didn't have to trade 2 first-round picks for him. And I'm not pointing that at any particular player on the Rams,
right?
But
we don't have to say.
We don't have to say names, but
it's a hypothetical.
Yeah, but Emmanuel Mosley, I'm just saying. I'm not saying he's better than Jalen Ramsey, but
you know why the Rams lost? You want me to really lay it out to you why the Rams lost?
go for it.
The Rams lost because they're a sorry-ass team. They're soft. They are a soft, mentally weak team. As soon as they were presented with any sort of adversity, they just absolutely crumbled. Matt Stafford, who, let's just say what it is, has the most career starts in NFL history without winning a playoff game, he was seeing ghosts out there. He looked like New York Jets quarterback Sam Darnold facing Bill Belichick. Second half, he absolutely crumbled. Kyle Shanahan in the run game just, snatched the soul of the Rams in the second half. They had a drive where they, I think, ran the ball 11 straight times, including a stretch where they ran the same exact play 3 times in a row, but ran it to the left one time and then to the right one time and then to the left another time. If they were playing Madden right now, there'd be some 4-year-old on the mic saying, "You're cheesing the game." And how did they end that drive? Oh, they, ran it to Debo. Psych. Debo's actually throwing the ball right over Jalen Ramsey's head.
Debo who?
Debo who? I guess that's the problem is just, they can't see Debo when he's back there.
They had no idea. The ball was just floating and they were confused. This team is they're
they've disabled sorry ass Rams. You can say it.
The Rams are
poverty organization too. You ain't got no fans. How are you gonna have a home game to win the division and 75% of the crowd is the other team? Who are your fans? I live in Los Angeles now. I ain't see one Rams hat out here. Poverty franchise.
Truly embarrassing the way that this ended up working out for the Rams. They're up 17-0. Sean McVay runs on the field. Jalen Ramsey gets trucked by Deebo Samuel and then it's like, I got you. Everything is working in their favor. All they have to do is not screw it up. I want to say, because I think that this roster is, the 49ers roster, because we said this coming into the season, is still the best in the division. And it's confusing for the layman to hear that because Jalen Ramsey, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, like Cooper Kupp, Von Miller, just all of these players are clearly better than like your starting player at that. But again, the Emmanuel Mosley comparison, Jalen Ramsey's a better cornerback than Emmanuel Mosley, of course. But if you just look at the production of these two players, it's not like they're not in two different leagues. And then on top of that, we do have Nick Bosa, we do have George Kittle, we do have Deebo Samuel, we do have players that are light years ahead of most players in the NFL. But Kyle Shanahan, this was one of my favorite Kyle Shanahan games. He really won this game in the second half. He outcoached Sean McVay, which he's done several times now.
6 times.
6 times to be specific.
In a row.
Yeah. He really outcoached the hell out of the Rams. He just went right back into his bag of tricks. We're just going to run, do it 11 times. And then Deebo Samuel's going to throw a touchdown. The second half, particularly like the fourth quarter and in overtime, it was such a well executed game plan by Kyle Shanahan. It was so impressive. And it was so frustrating to watch as Niners fans because it's like, oh my God, there's no way that we could win this game. And then we do. And the reason we won is because these players wanted it so much more than the Rams players did. And because Kyle Shanahan is a better coach than Sean McVay is. So the Niners are the best team in this division. I think that they have a chance at winning the Super Bowl, which is so strange because mid-season I said the Niners will not win the Super Bowl this year. I was out. I didn't think it was possible. But again, every team in the NFL was several different teams. And when I said that, the Niners were the worst version of themselves. And right now, they are the best version of themselves, which they are peaking at the right time. And that's all you could ask for. I think Jimmy still gives me so much pause. But we go into Dallas, and I like our chances if Jimmy just doesn't throw duck interceptions to players on the opposing team.
Right. And I mean, really, at the end of the day, we got to thank the Rams for this 49er season because we were dead in the water after losing to Colt McCoy and, just absolutely dominated the Rams on Monday Night Football. And then, we were dead in the water again, being down 17-0. And the soft ass, mentally weak Rams just rolled over, and we just imposed our will on them. So this was one of the most insane 49er seasons.
Painful. So
many ups and downs. Every time you thought they were out, they would, pull you back in. Then every time you thought they were in, they'd be like Lucy and they pull the football away from you.
Mm-hmm.
I think, one of the people I want to give the biggest props to for this season is DeMeco Ryans.
Yeah.
Because rookie defensive coordinator, Niners ended up with the number 3 overall defense this year. And I understand that they had a lot of talented players on that defense, but they also got decimated at corner this year. So much so that they're running out Josh Norman and Dante Johnson and a rookie Ambry Thomas, who was benched for the first half of the year because he just, I guess, wasn't doing well in camp and preseason and practice. And DeMeco was able to get just an insane amount of production out of this defense, especially towards the back half of the year. Once he figured out what pieces he has and how to use them correctly, it was game over for everyone else. So I think, not this year, but I think he's going to be a head coach one day in the NFL, much like Robert Saleh before him. And props to him. He did an incredible job this year.
And shout out to the NFL media for being bad at their jobs. And I don't blame them for being bad at their jobs because they have to talk every single day for 24 hours. And so they have to make up stories. And so early in the season, it was, should the Niners fire DeMeco Ryans? Because look at this defense. They're bad. They're not as good as when Robert Saleh was here. And then flashback to when Saleh was a rookie defensive coordinator for us. Should the Niners fire Robert Saleh? And just keep going down the line. Every time that we've ever had a great defensive coordinator, they struggle to start because you're learning who these people are. You're learning how to put these pieces in order and how to form the puzzle, but also these are people. Mm-hmm. And you're learning and you're figuring out okay, how do I interact with these people and how do I teach and help them learn.
We're not playing Madden out here.
No.
You don't just plug in, your players with their ratings and their attributes and go out there and press some buttons.
No, that's the big thing about Brandon Ayuk and Ambry Thomas and several other players on this team. They had to have conversations in order to spring them into action.
Yeah, Kyle and BA, quote, had some words.
They had some words. Because Brandon Ayuk, just something wasn't clicking, and Shanahan and he had to have a conversation about that, and they came to an agreement. They came to an understanding, and then Brandon Ayuk was one of the best receivers in the NFL for the second half of the season. And it's the same thing with Ambry Thomas.
Lifted up his confidence because those first couple times out there, he was looking a little shaky, a little going up for the ball. He wasn't very confident about it. He was a little hesitant. But you watch that last play against the Rams. And the ball, it's a bad ball by Stat Padford out there. But you can see Ambry found the ball before Odell even did. Mm-hmm. Ambry was tracking that thing the whole way. Right. And he went up and, he got it.
And so shout out to DeMeco Ryans because he really figured out this defense and how to put them in a position to win football games. And thank God he did, because if our defense wasn't as strong as it was, we wouldn't even be... We would be way under 500 mm-hmm. with the way that Garoppolo played quarterback for much of this season.
I think that's going to do it for this week's podcast. Really fun year in the NFL. Let us know if you have any predictions for the NFL postseason. How do you think the sorry-ass soft Rams are going to do? Will Matt Stafford ever win a playoff game? Will Sean McVay continue to prove that he's just a bozo with a clipboard? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a good one.